Okay, we'll put it on me for a second just while I say hello. Hello. Hope everybody's doing well and is staying healthy. Um, this is take two of um, today's episode, right? Um, so just before we started, just kind of noticed, not on purpose or whatever, but I was wearing this sweatshirt and looking down at my wrist with Mr. Haggerty's band. And I've been teaching or trying to teach distance learning to the 10th graders about World War II, and talking about the escape at Dunkirk and the people during the Blitz living in the subway system in Britain, you know. So I know the last couple of weeks haven't been ideal, and most of us would probably rather be doing other things. Our sports season's getting canceled and all that, but it could always be worse, right? Let's hope everybody's healthy, and let's remember some of the people we lost. Right? Okay, so here goes. This is, I believe, it's shutdown assignment 4. All right. I might be off on the number, but you see this. This is the one that I gave you the extra questions from, in addition to what Mr. Clifford did on the video. Okay, so hopefully you paid attention to what he said on the video, and I kicked back that homework to you, right? Or that assignment, and you saw my comments, but some of you either took pictures and sent it, so I couldn't really comment. At least I don't know how to comment on that. And others of you might not have understood my comments. So this is really important. I want to make sure you guys got the whole idea. Okay? So the first question was about why the monopoly is able to exist, and that's because of barriers to entry. Right? Doesn't matter what kind of barrier to entry, but there's something stopping other firms from getting into this industry, whatever industry this is. Okay? Government regulation or access to resources, or it's a natural monopoly, whatever. My cameraman thinks he needs a hood on, apparently, when he records. Okay. All right, so the next question was about why marginal revenue falls underneath demand. To explain that on the AP and to get credit, you need to use the correct terminology. So you have to include the quantity effect and the price effect. Right? The idea that in order for this guy to sell one more unit or an additional unit, he's got to lower the price on that unit and all the previous units. Right? So that's the quantity effect and the price effect. Right? So the quantity effect is his good news. He's selling another one. What the price effect is the bad news. He's got to do that at a lower price. Right? And if he lowers the price on that next one, he's got to lower the price on all the other ones. So that's why your marginal revenue curve falls underneath your demand curve. Right? And while we're at it, you should know that it hits exactly halfway between the origin and where the demand curve intersects the x-axis. Right? So that's right in between, wherever that would be. If that's 500, that would be 250. And at that point, where marginal revenue hits 0, equates to your point of unit elasticity. Cameraman is breathing very heavy. You could try to not breathe as heavy. It equates to the point of unit elasticity, right? So that makes this the elastic range of the demand curve, the inelastic range of the demand curve, right? Which means as you're lowering price here, your total revenue, that's just the boiler, don't worry, your total revenue is increasing, even though at a decreasing rate, right? Once you hit here and your marginal revenue goes negative, now your total revenue starts to decrease, right? And again, they might ask you to show side-by-side curves of your marginal revenue and your total revenue, right? So your total revenue is increasing, but at a decreasing rate until you hit unit elasticity. Marginal revenue goes negative, total revenue starts to drop, right? So we talked about price and quantity effect. Revenues increasing at a decreasing rate. In order to sell one more, okay, all that. Socially optimal. A lot of you guys kind of beat around the bush, but again, you got to get the right terminology. Socially optimal, another way of saying it, that's what I wanted you to get, was allocative efficiency. Right? It's allocatively efficient because the last unit, the cost of that last unit to the producer is exactly what the buyer was willing to pay. All right? So it's the cost of the last unit is equal to what the consumer is willing to pay. That's allocated efficiency. And we could also say, or just kind of keep in mind that your marginal cost curve becomes the supply curve, right? So socially optimal, allocatively efficient, the cost of producing that is equal to the willingness to pay. And why are you willing to pay? Because it gives you benefit, right? So this demand curve is really your marginal benefit curve. Marginal benefit, marginal cost, MR equals MC, all that, right? Magic spot, right? That's allocatively efficient, but that's not where we are. I'm not going to tell you where the price is, because if you don't know that, you're in real trouble. Okay, so again, supply, marginal cost, demand, marginal benefit, where they meet is socially optimal. And you should know that that's socially optimal and allocatively efficient because no dead weight loss, right? All mutually beneficial transactions have taken place. So why is there dead weight loss, all right? I said I wasn't going to give it to you, but I am. So here's your price, right? Because the monopolist still follows the golden rule. He produces where MC equals MR. But he's got power, so he jacks up the price all the way up to here, right? So that creates dead weight loss. A lot of you decided just to talk about dead weight loss and what it is and why it is, but I asked you to actually say how you would show dead weight loss, right? So again, just quick side note, don't be like my dopey 10th graders, right? And make sure you're answering the question that is asked. If I asked you what brand of car you just bought, you would not say, I bought a green car that's very fast. You would say, I bought a Toyota, or I bought a Ford. If I asked you what you had for breakfast, you would not say, it was delicious, hope it was. You would say, I had pancakes and eggs. All right, make sure, answer the prompt. Okay, so how do you show dead weight loss? A couple different ways, right? Some of you said with the mathematical equation, you could go from P2 down to P6, right? And then multiply that by Q3 divided by 2, the area of the triangle, right? Plenty of different ways you could have said it. You could have said it's from point A down to P6 over to C. C is the same thing as Q3. All right, so all different ways you could do it. But the bottom line is it's A, which is P2, down to P6, which is no letter for, P6 Q1, over to C, which is Q3. So a bunch of different ways you could have said that, but it's that triangle there. All right. Okay, so if the government said this guy has got to maintain the market price of P4, okay? Because again, that would be allocatively efficient. If it was perfect competition, that would be your price. The government said you can't go above that, which by the way, if you can't go above a price, what is it? What stops me from going up is ceiling, so that's price ceiling, right? So the government said price ceiling, P4, can't go above it. Is this guy going to produce? Yes. Again, most of you guys had that. Why? Because he's still above his ATC. If he's still above his ATC, he's still making profit, right? So he's still going to do it. Does the cameraman need a pause to blow his nose?
No.
Okay. So he's still above his ATC. Then how do we show his profit? Again, different ways we could do it. We could show that it's from C down to ATC, so he gets that much profit, and he gets it that many times. So that's his per unit profit that he gets, and he gets it that many times. Are you sure you don't need to blow your nose?
Yes.
All right, so you could also say C matches up to P4, so he gets from P4. Now, I told you there is no price on the one they gave you here. There's no price that matches up to that minimum ATC, or that point of ATC. So you could have said from P4 down to just below P5, or some of you said from P4 down to ATC, and then you get that Q3 times. Okay, but it's, again, it's that per unit profit, and it's that many times. All right, so you would make that rectangle there. So again, still making profit. Is that more or less? Some of you guys were trying to say that it was either less or more than the other one? We don't know because there's no actual prices here and no actual quantities, right? It's all just positioning. Okay, so we're really not sure. And the other reason we really can't tell is because you went from producing at a price and quantity that was in your elastic range, and you moved it down past unit elasticity into a point where now you're in the inelastic range, right? So we don't really know whether that profit was more or less or equal, right? We just know that for sure the price came down and the quantity went up. And again, some of you guys were kind of off on your verbiage and your explanation there because you were talking about how price was higher than it should have been and quantity was lower than it should have been. That's what was happening in the monopolist structure. But because of the price regulation, they brought the price down and they brought the quantity up. And again, he's still going to produce because he's above ATC. Okay. Next. Okay, next. I'm going to wipe the board here. And this is the part that talks about the price discrimination. All right, so we had a little bit of an issue here too. Nothing too terrible. Grab a marker here from Yoda. I'm going to come on the other side. Okay, so this one, again, this is not real life. So very rarely is your marginal cost the same thing as your average total cost. But the point of this one was to show you something different. So it doesn't really matter. Again, get in the habit of your demand curve and then your marginal cost curve. And remember, that would hit halfway from the origin to demand. And they told you this was 200, and that came down to also 200. Right? They don't have to take that price, right? They're going to jack the price up as high as they can, which in this case worked out to be 600. Okay, so again, because he's a monopolist, any market structure, some of you should have been sitting there yelling at me, that's not marginal cost, that's marginal revenue. Any entrepreneur or economist or whatever, doesn't matter what structure, you're always going to produce where MC hits MR, that's going to be your quantity. The monopolist, though, has control, so he jacks the price up to 600. Okay, so your first question was, what is your total revenue at that situation? So you're getting $600 and you're getting it 200 times. So your total revenue is going to equal, so we've gone from sniffling to yawning. The total revenue is going to be 120,000. But as I always say, we don't care about total revenue. We care about total profit. So from that revenue, we have to take away total cost, which is total cost. Well, doing this costs him $200 each time. He did it 200 times. So that's 200 times 200 equals
oh my God.
40,000. I'm sorry. Yeah, 40,000. Am I getting the right units? 200 times 200, 40,000. So take that away and you get your total profit of 80,000. Okay. Now again, that's if he's a single price monopolist. This guy can only charge one price. Okay. So your consumer surplus, and we'll come back to this in a second. Again, below demand, above price. The price is 600. Here's demand. So that's your original consumer surplus. Okay. We'll actually calculate that in a second. But now it says this guy can figure out that he can charge two prices. Anybody who's willing to spend 600, he's going to charge them 600 or less, right? If they or more, I should say. If they were willing to spend 601, 602, 603, 604, 700, whatever, he's going to charge them that also. Those people, that's where this consumer surplus comes from. But now he realizes he can also charge, he can identify another group of people who are willing to spend $400. So those people are now going to enter the market. All right, and if you look at the sheet, there's another 100 of them. All right, that's going to take it over to 300. All right, so we'll come back to that consumer surplus in a second. But first, let's do his total profit again. Okay, so now your total revenue is still those first 200 people who were willing to spend $600 or more. All right, so he still gets the 120,000 from those guys, but now he's got a whole other 100 people who are willing to spend 400 or more. Right, so from those guys, he gets 40,000. But don't forget, we got to take away his cost. That's just total revenue. All right, so from that, we got to take total cost, which would be, again, 200 times. I'm sorry, $200, but now it's 300 times. I think. Yeah. So now it's $200, 300 times. That equals 60,000, I believe. Okay, so now his total profit is 100,000. Okay, so his total profit was 80,000. Now, because he can identify another group of consumers, now his total profit is up by 20,000. Okay, now we got to come back to consumer surplus stuff. All right, so your consumer surplus was here. Now we have this other group of consumers who are getting that. Here's where we went wrong. Here's where a lot of you guys went wrong. I think, and again, as I said on your comments, a lot of you didn't show your work, so I'm not sure. But based on what you were doing and coming out too high, I think you were including this area here. This area here, these consumers were already accounted for up here. So it's only this little section that we're adding on to. Okay? So your original consumer surplus went from up here was 1,000. Okay, so your original consumer surplus was, okay, you can back up a little. Thank you. Yeah, let's actually do it here. Okay, was 1,000 down to 600. So take away 600, right? Times how tall is that triangle? It was originally that was 200. Doesn't look like a 2 anymore. That was 200.
I think you just made it worse. You just made it worse.
Sorry. 200. And we divide that by 2. Right? So your original consumer surplus is going to equal 40,000. But now I got to add on this little triangle. Okay? So that little triangle would be from 600 down to 400. Right? So that's 200. They're filling up water outside. And then from here to here, how much did we increase the quantity? It went from 200 to 300. Okay? And again, we put that over 2. And our new our additional consumer surplus was 10,000. Okay, so original consumer surplus, additional or new consumer surplus. So now my new total consumer surplus is 50,000. Okay? So again, I think the big mistake here was when you add that new group in, all right, you're only getting this much more of a triangle of consumer surplus. It was this. Now we add on this. This area was already accounted for up here. Okay? So the bottom line here is, swing this way so they don't have to see our disgusting garage. Okay, now they already did. Thank you. Yeah, we're in the basement and we just moved recently, so it's hideous. The whole idea is, please, the price discrimination, right? That's what this is. It's price discrimination. Some price discrimination is actually going to increase consumer surplus because there's more people with a willingness to pay, and the price is lower than that willingness to pay. But you should know, more importantly, if you have perfect price discrimination and you find out every exact person's willingness to pay, you're going to end up here, right? Every single person pays exactly what they're willing to pay, and there is no consumer surplus. Okay, if there's perfect price discrimination. Okay, just let me take a quick sip. I'm doing a lot of talking. And then the free response question from the 2009. Again, we did pretty well with this, but there were some mistakes, and that is most likely what you're going to see on the exam. We want to make sure we get that exactly right. Okay? So, even those of you who got it right and drew it pretty well, I want you to watch this because I was thinking about it, and even the last night when I was drawing up that the first one we did and making sure, okay, here I have ATC here, and then I got a